the seventh night of Hanukkah. It's Rosh Chodesh today. Was Rosh Chodesh today, we can say. It's still Rosh Chodesh in Hawaii, I guess, or even maybe California. So the idea of renewal, let's begin with Hanukkah, and then we'll bring it into the Parsha. And of course, we have renewal of Chodesh. And what's this whole idea of renewal? And how does it, of course, most importantly, relate to our own lives? So Hanukkah, anytime someone has a new home, there's something called the Chanukah Habayit. I'm sure you've heard of this phrase before. And Chanukah Habayit means that we welcome this new house. Where does this whole idea of Chanukah Habayit come from? It comes from Hanukkah. Because when the Jews came into the Bet HaMikdash, after the Greeks decimated the place, and they wanted to rededicate the temple and rededicate the commitment. And so we all know the story. And they, from one night became 8 nights, but it was about the rededication. The name of the holiday is Chanukah Tzabeyach. The name of the holiday of Pesach is Pesach Purim. The name is critical to the crux of what's going on in that space. So anytime there's a holiday, anytime there's a celebration, anytime there's an anniversary, birthday, it's really about a rededication. That's why we have it. When you give someone a gift for their birthday, their anniversary, a wedding, what are you trying to do really? What are you trying to accomplish? You're trying to create and recreate a new energized experience of that moment. So, yes, it's always nice to eat birthday cake, but more than that, it's I appreciate this day that you were born. I appreciate this day that we got married. I appreciate this day that there's New Year's, et cetera, et cetera. So Hanukkah is appreciating the fact that we have a connection to Hashem, and we want to show it to Him. We want to show it to the world. We want to express the light that we have, the light that we know is given to us by Hashem, and we want to share that light. So there's a new dedication on Hanukkah. This week's Torah portion, Mikeitz, always falls out either on or right around Hanukkah. And of course, it deals with Joseph. Joseph, my favorite character, not fair to call him character, my favorite icon in the Bible. This week alone, he goes from being in the lowest place possible in the world, the bottom of the pit, so to speak. And in an instant, he goes from the lowest place to become the second most powerful man in the whole world. Now, Joseph many times has this seesaw where he's up and he's down. His father favors him. The brothers don't like him. They sell him. He makes it to Potiphar's house, then down into the basement again. So Joseph is a constant state of renewal. And it's appropriate that on this particular time, as we collide with Hanukkah, we see that Joseph also gets this renewal. In other words, in Parshat Mikeitz, Joseph goes from being a prisoner to the president, so to speak. So this idea of renewal is very much front and center, both in terms of Rosh Chodesh and in terms of Hanukkah, and in terms of the portion of Mikeitz that we're in, highlighted by Joseph's behavior and movements. Now, let's talk about Joseph for a second, and let's figure out what is it about Joseph that he's the only one in the entire Bible that Hashem refers to as Yosef Ish Matzliach. Yosef is a successful man. How's that possible? What's his magic? What does he have that the other brothers didn't have? At the end, in this week's Torah portion, starting actually from today in Rabbi, we see where the brothers are already prostrating themselves to him. His dreams that he had about his brothers are coming true, that they're going to recognize him as great. Not in any way of arrogance, as we'll soon explain, but what did he know that his brothers didn't know? His father knew something. His father favored Joseph, not because only he was Rachel's son. That's a pshat level, but there's also a deeper level. He favored his son Joseph because he saw in Joseph a certain magic, as it were, a certain worldview that was very different than his brothers. And now, at this point in the Torah portion, we see that worldview becoming into fruition and becoming a reality and becoming successful. So what is it? What is this magic recipe that Joseph has? And it says, Mayshe avis simin labanim b'nesinas koach labanim, which means the stories of our parents are a source of strength to us and to give us strength, which means we need to learn from Joseph. So what is it that he had that we can all appreciate? Well, of course, what he had was this endless light, a light that could not be extinguished. And he's always in tune and in touch with that light. And we'll talk about how he's able to maintain that light even in the most difficult circumstances. So let's go through the storyline for a second. Joseph's in prison. Oh, by the way, another characteristic of Joseph, we had this at the very end of last week's Torah portion, his ability to never lose his cool and never be down. No matter what's going on around him, he never is down. He's 12 years in prison. He sees two guys, prisoners, mocking and feeling down. he slaps him on the back and say, "Hey, what's the matter, Chevro? What's wrong today? Why do you have such a long face?" What do you mean, why do you have such? We're in prison. Of course we have a long face. That doesn't stop Joseph. He literally slaps him on the back and say, "Why do you have such a long face?" And they tell him, "We had bad dreams, and can you help us interpret the dreams?" But his ability, from where he was coming from, no family, no brothers and sisters, down in the pit, no one knows who he is, no one knows where he is, and he still is asking a neighbor after 12 years in prison, "Hey, buddy, what's up?" That shows you the sense of connectedness and fire that he still lives with constantly, no matter what's going on around him. Again, we still need to answer the question, where does he get that magic from? Let's fast forward. It's 12 years in prison. All of a sudden, Pharaoh has a weird dream. We know the serviceman from Pharaoh says, "Oh, I had met a guy downstairs, the Jew who knows how to interpret dreams. He was really good." They call him up. And Joseph says, "Okay, let me hear the dream." And Pharaoh says the following. We all know, but it's worth repeating. There are 7 fat cows, or 7 satiated cows, and 7 thin cows. And the 7 thin cows eat up the 7 fat cows. And then I had another dream. There were 7 fat stalks of wheat and 7 thin ones. And the 7 thin ones ate the 7 heavy ones. And we can't figure things out. Now, Pharaoh had his own dream interpreters. You know, it wasn't just the Venice Beach riffraff. He had some high-level dream interpreters, and they couldn't figure it out. And Joseph says, "I'll tell you what it is. Simple. There's going to be a famine. It's going to wipe out all your excess and all your abundance, and it's going to completely overtake the abundance. So the 7 famine years is going to be so strong that's going to overtake the years of plenty. And so what you need to do is you need to put away, stockpile during the years of plenty, so when the famine happens, you'll nibble off the stockpile and everyone will be saved." Now, when you think about this for a second, number one, what's so difficult about this dream? We're going to throw a few questions. That the greatest dream interpreters couldn't figure this out. I mean, you see 7 fat, 7 thin, you couldn't make that summation. So A, what was so hard for them to figure out? B, why does Joseph go ahead and give Pharaoh advice? He asked for interpretation. He didn't ask for advice. Interpret the dream as you want. Then he's giving eitzes to Pharaoh, and therefore you should save your entire kingdom by doing this and by doing that. The chutzpah, he's a prisoner. He just came out. Be happy to even, see the sky. No, he gives him a whole interpretation, a whole advice on this dream. And Pharaoh afterwards, what does Pharaoh say? He says, "This guy's amazing. He's the greatest." Now, remember, if you look inside the Bible, the verses are broken up where he interprets and then he advises. If Pharaoh thought he was an amazing interpreter, he should have said so after he interpreted the dream. No, Pharaoh waits till after the interpretation, then after the advice, and then he starts to give accolades to Joseph. He never even asked him for advice. It maybe have been a dangerous move to give advice in such a position. And yet he gives it anyways. Why? And where does Joseph come off giving that advice? In addition to the interpretation. And the answer is like this. If you take a look in the Hebrew, and it talks about the 7 fat cows next to 7 thin ones, it says vataimanna, that they stood next to each other. And this was a problem for the interpreters. They couldn't quite understand this idea of these 2 together. If there was 7 here and 7 there, but they were next to each other, it confused them in terms of being able to handle and being able to understand this dream and what it really means. But Joseph, as we said, is wired very differently. He's even wired than his holy brothers, the Shvatim, the tribes of Israel. Joseph sees things in terms of fusion. He sees things in terms of dichotomies that exist and coexist. And he sees it in the dream. He sees the way the verse is. It says that they were standing next to each other. He realizes that it's possible to have both at the same time. The only way you can do it is you have to stockpile some so that you have it during the other. So during the times of famine, you also have stockpiles of food that you can reach from, so at the same time. And obviously during the times of satiation and abundance, you nibble off the side and you portion away so you can have both at the same time. He sees them both work together. That's how Joseph is built. He's wired that way. In Judaism, so much of our lives are surrounded by highlighted points that we appreciate and that affect us. Comes Hanukkah, we light the menorah. We're inspired by the light. Hopefully we have opportunity to zone in and meditate on the light. In the Chabad customs, we have that after you light the menorah, you don't run away and go back to Netflix. You go right there and spend a half hour just staring at the jumpings of the lights of the menorah. and have an effect on you. Joseph right away realizes that there has to be a fusion of the two. His brothers didn't understand the idea of Egypt. He didn't understand the idea of a bigger world. They were all shepherds. They lived in their own society. They lived in, so to speak, their own spiritual cocoon. Joseph pushed for an integration of the real world around him and to affect it. And they thought he was crazy. And they didn't like his approach. But the father did like the approach, and that's why he favored him. And sure enough, we see that Joseph was right. All the brothers came to Joseph, who ultimately saves the day, and he manages to integrate the both spiritual part of him and the most physical surroundings. We had last week's Torah portion. A 17-year-old boy gets propositioned by Potiphar's wife. No father, no mother, no brothers, no sisters, nobody's around him. If there was ever a time he could have got away with something, that was for sure the time. And he would have been rewarded for it. And no, he holds strong. Why? Because he's spiritually locked in to a higher place, to a higher position. It doesn't allow him to go ahead and fall, because he's completely in sync with this duality of the spiritual voice and light that he has inside and the physical world around him. He understands this too. So when he sees the dream, he sees this possibility as well. Not only does he see the possibility, but this answers a question. The interpretation was not part of the was not separate from the dream. The interpretation was part of the dream. He sees the dream and the interpretation as one thing. That the fact that they're next to each other is the solution, is also part of the dream. It wasn't his own eitzah. It wasn't his own idea. That's the worldview. Most people see this as a dichotomy. But Joseph says, no, in a dream you can have contradictions. In a dream there can be confusion. That's what dreams are. Dreams are, there can be dreams where some person can dream that they think that they actually passed away in their dream, and then they wake up, they realize they never passed away, they were just dreaming. So while they're alive, they may be sleeping, they're alive, they have a very bad dream, and they wake up out of it. Thank God they were just dreaming. It says, before benching Shir Hamalet B'Shuvasina Es Shiva Sina Yinu Kecholmin, that what happens when the Geula happens, when God willing we're merit to have Mashiach, when we have the third Beit HaMikdash, like we had the first two, and we see godliness overt, and he's not hiding like he does in Galus, he hides, and we have to extract him, but he's all over the place. We realize that Galus was like a dream compared to the reality. Joseph's able to see this fusion of physical and spiritual because he understands that Galut is like a dream. It's not a dream. This is real. We're all on Zoom. We're really doing our thing. Rabboni's working out. This is a real thing happening right now. Baruch Hashem. But compared to Geula, when you see godliness revealed, it's like a dream. And Joseph understands this and is able to bring this as a principle, as a guiding light in every aspect of his life. And as you know, the Sephardim, as I promised you I would share, since we have, Baruch Hashem, a lot of members joining us today, because I always said I'm a Sephardic wannabe, but so be it. It's called Parat Yosef. Everybody's familiar with this idea as Parat Yosef. Parat Yosef means the children of the fruitfulness of Yosef. Why does it have such a uniqueness that we exist in the world even some thousands of years later? Because of his ability to be fruitful and to continuously renew this experience. To have a fusion and see the world in a renewed way, the way Hanukkah is a dedication of renew, the way Yosef goes from prisoner to present is renew, the way today's Rosh Chodesh is idea of renew is to be in a constant state of renewing your experience of this dichotomy of physical and spiritual. And Joseph figures out how to do it. Not only does he figure out how to do it, but you'll wait, if you have a little bit of patience, till next week, when you have Vayigash and Joseph reveals himself to the brother, the crescendo, the highlight, and they're apologizing, and they're so embarrassed, and they don't know what to do. And Joseph, what does he tell him? He says, no, you don't understand. This is exactly how Hashem wanted this to play out. Because Joseph understands that there has to be this fusion of physical and spiritual. Don't feel bad, he tells them. You thought it had to be some sort of separatist, elitist experience of shepherding sheep and being away from the community. No. That's okay, Joseph says. God had a different plan for all of us. And the most important thing is to appreciate is how to make it last, how to make this special light last. That's the idea of when you have 7 fat years and 7 lean years. Sometimes when we daven Shemona Esrei, or we have a special moment, we're locked in to that moment, and the moment is over, we're back to ourselves. How do we maintain this experience of having a high level of a spiritual experience, and when it's over, you still can keep the high, as we like to say, in Venice Beach? And the answer is like this. That while B'shas Mayshe, while there's years of plenty, while you're lighting the menorah, you should also concentrate and meditate that even when you're not lighting the menorah, the candle should be with you. The light should be with you. It's just a small little focus. Even when you're davening, Shachris, Mincha, Ma'ariv, Shabbos. What happens on Shabbos? You have an extra neshama, and everybody enjoys Shabbos, and your phone is off, and your computers are off, and you have time with the family and time with each other. Comes Havdalah, back, boom, social media, Facebook, Netflix, blah, 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 blah. Relax. When on Shabbos, take an extra moment and say, look, I'm going to be leaving Shabbos, right? It says, Al Tirav Di Yaakov. So what is that? Why are you not to be scared? Is to take some of Shabbos with you. If we can find it within ourselves to find the light on Hanukkah when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, in order to renew it, what's the reward Hashem gives us by finding this light? Is that it gets extended. If we can find, like Yosef, to understand that things can be together, when you have years of plenty, you can also reserve some of that for the years that are difficult or the times that are difficult. That could also be extended. So much so that some 2,000-3,000 years later, we're speaking about Yosef here on Hanukkah and Rosh Chodesh. So the idea of this extension has to be appreciated in every cycle of life and every element of life. For example, when a child is 3 years old, there's a custom we have. I'm not sure if the custom, how wide it is. Maybe you guys can jump in, but the custom is you take a 3-year-old child, and the first time he goes to Cheder, and you wrap him up in a tallis, and people throw candy on him. It's almost like a little mini ufruf. You know, he should be excited about going to Cheder and learning Torah. You could say even a bar bat mitzvah, right? Someone's bar bat mitzvah. What do? You make a big party and you give them lots of gifts, and everybody goes dancing. And everybody gives them. Can you imagine you make a big party for a bar mitzvah boy or upstanders or bat mitzvah boy, and the day after, say, you know what? I'm not putting on tefillin anymore. I'm not interested. What happens? The whole party is so that he should be interested. He says you continue to go ahead and love this experience of being a bar mitzvah, a bat mitzvah. So same idea of Rosh Chodesh, the same idea of Hanukkah, the same idea of Yosef. We have Hanukkah, what? Not that you should have Hanukkah and then be done. The light of Hanukkah is to remind us who we really are and what really we carry inside of us. And all we need to do is have that passion to go ahead and desire and to be revealed. What is light? We spoke a lot about light last week. Another idea of light. It's not just Or Ein Sof, but what is light? The whole idea of light is revelation. Light in itself is not necessarily creating something. If you put on the light, if you shut the lights off in your room right now, and then you put it back on, it's not creating something new. It's simply revealing that which is there. To turn the light on is not an ask necessarily of creating something. To turn the light on is to be able to find something. You lost something, put the light on. It's dark, you have a light on your phone, you know how to hit the button, flashlight on your phone, boom, you look for something. Light means to reveal. Joseph continuously is in touch with his own personal light, so he's always able to reveal his role, his guiding, his mission, no matter where he is. Never gets sidetracked. Could be with his brothers, could be with being sold, could be Potiphar, could be in prison. He never loses his light. So whether it's Joseph, whether it's Hanukkah, whether it's Rosh Chodesh, there's always this uniqueness that exists in terms of understanding the fusion of both the physical and the spiritual, how they can interplay to each other, and never losing light. I want to share, since it's Hanukkah, I want to share another idea, somewhat connected, but we're going to take a little bit off path, and we'll come back to the point that we're speaking about tonight. This more has to do with the liturgy of Hanukkah and Haneres Halalu. And when we understand this, hopefully we'll have a deeper appreciation of what I've been trying to share. But first, L'chaim. Irish coffee. It works at 9 o'clock at night, you know. So we say in Haneres Halalu, Haneres Halalu anu madlikin ala chuos v'anisim v'anefloes. The first part of Haneres Halalu, it talks about the 3 different types of miracle, which is Yeshua, Teshua, which is salvation, Nisim, miracles, and Niflaot is wonders. 3 different types of experiences in life that we all were fortunate enough to merit during the times of Hanukkah, and we can also merit them now. Now, when you go to the end of Haneres Halalu, it changes. Now, I'm sure that the writers were of good sound in mind, and yet they have a different order. Why in the beginning does it say Haneres Halalu ala chuas v'al nisim v'anefloes? And then it ends off, it says, Al nisecha v'al nifloesecha v'al Yeshua secha. It changes the order. What happened? Is it different Hanukkah? What are they talking about? So I'll give you the quick answer, and then we'll dig in a little bit. The quick answer is like this. The first part of Haneres Halalu, when it talks about Shuas, Nisim, and Falls, well, let's talk about those first three things. What is the difference between Yeshua, Nisim, and Niflaot? Is it just adjectives? No. They each are different manifestations of how God reveals himself to us. You could say that the highest level is what we call Nisim. Nisim is a miracle, straight up miracle. It was a miracle. A 2-year-old boy lifted up a truck. That's a miracle. No question about it. It's a total break of any kind of nature. Niflaot is a wonderment. A wonderment is an amazing sunset you barely get to see. The Grand Canyon, a gorgeous setting. It's not necessarily miraculous, but it's still amazing. It's still wonderment. Yeshua is salvation. Salvation means that it wasn't necessarily a miracle, and it wasn't necessarily a wonder, but you're happy that you're saved. Let's just give an example of a salvation like this. Let's say there's two boxers. Maybe it's a bad example, but I started with it. I'll roll with it. There's two boxers to get into a ring, and they're basically even. You know, they're even predictable. The odds makers are putting them at even. Fine. The one who wins, maybe he could have won, maybe he could have lost, but he's grateful because he had salvation. He walked away a winner. He steps out of the ring. He's a winner. He shouldn't feel good about himself. He should feel great about himself. Give him the belt. He won. Mazel tov. So to have Yeshua is also something. Now, in the first part of the Alanissim, we have it in the letter, in the order of how it was, the sequence of how things went. And in the end, we'll talk about the sequence of what's the highest. So it goes like this. In the first part, we have the order was there was Yeshua. There was first a battle in Modin. Modin was already even money who was going to win because the Maccabees were very strong. This was their town. They were going to have people push them around the Greeks. And the Greeks came in and they won. So they were grateful there was a Yeshua that they won. It wasn't so much miraculous. Nisim was miraculous. That's when they had the real fights to get back in Yerushalayim, whereas the few against the many, the weak against the mighty. They should not have won that one. There was a miracle and they won. The next level we have is Niflaot, which is a wonderment. They found this jug of oil. Not necessarily a miracle beyond nature, but the fact that they found one jug of oil, that is a wonderment when everything else was broken. Of course, not for this Haner Salalu, but when they go ahead and the one jug lasts for 8 days, you can say that's more on the Nisim, but that's not what it's referring to Haner Salalu. Over here we're talking about Yeshua's, Nisim, Niflaos, the sequence of events. Battle of Modin, Battle of Jerusalem, Niflaot is they find the oil. At the end of Haner Salalu, after you said the brachot, and after you lit the candles, what are you thanking Hashem for? First of all, you thank him. It's called Mikal HaKavod. It's easiest to believe in God when there's miracles all around you. So you thank him for Nisim. Thank you for the miracle. We all need miracles in our life. When we get a miracle, there's nothing like it. God made for me a miracle. What could be greater, right? So you thank Hashem first and foremost for the Nisim. That's the easiest way to experience godliness, is when he's performing miracles for you. The next level, not as easy, but certainly, a crowd stopper, is Niflaot. There's a wonderment. It wasn't a miracle, but thank God it happened. I got the raise. I worked hard, but I got it. Amazing. Whatever the wonderment is in your life. Yeshua Secha is the least exciting and showstopper of the three, but it's the highest experience that we could have. And I'll venture to say this is the experience of Joseph. Joseph is living in a state of Yeshua Secha constantly. He's not holding and waiting for miracles. They happen to him, but he's constantly in Yeshua Secha. He's constantly both in the physical and the spiritual, and he's being saved continuously. He's not looking for it. He's not hoping for it. As a matter of fact, over and over and over again, there's everything but Yeshua, and there's but Nisim, and there's but Niflos. Because ultimately, he manages. Why do I say that? Because Yeshua means that Hashem is saving you. Ana Hashem Hoshiana. Ana Hashem Hoshiana. We said it twice today. We said it twice every day of Hanukkah. So when you say Hashem to save me, what you're saying is that to stay connected. You're not saying give miracles for me. You're not saying give me a break. You're saying that I should be connected with you. That's the hardest part of connection in many ways that we have from ourselves. It's the highest level, though. When you have a miracle, you're lucky. You go to the kotel, you're feeling inspired. Baruch Hashem, you should be grateful. You're fortunate for everybody who's had the experience, and we should all have them again right away. But in many ways, when you're not on the kotel and you're back in Brookline and there's a snowstorm tomorrow and there's going to be, and it's a school and all the schools are shut and everybody's going to be home again. Here we go, quarantine part 4. But still, you manage to go ahead and find joy in the miracles that you have and the blessings that you've been given and your family and your children and your health, etc., etc. That's that's the highest level. Joseph walked in the space of Yeshua Secha. He wasn't perturbed. He was completely. And I just want to conclude with this one idea that you'll notice in Hallel we say Ana Hashem Hoshiana, Ana Hashem Hoshiana, Ana Hashem Hatzlichana, Ana Hashem Hatzlichana. Hoshia comes before Hatzlacha. If we're going to be in a space and a mind and our heart and a soul that we're constantly connected to Kadosh Baruch Hu, and He's constantly watching us, if we do our part, Ana Hashem Hashiana is that we should be saved. In other words, because we've merited that opportunity to be saved, then no question there'll be Hatzlichana. Hatzlichana is already above and beyond our capacity. Our capacity is already in Hoshia. That's already on us. That's Yosef, who's ground. He's the ground guy. He's not above in the clouds. He's on the ground. And Hatzlichana is already the measure that we are rewarded because of this level of Hoshiana. So let us ask Hashem that we should have Hoshiana. Let us ask Hashem that we should have Hatzlichana. Let us fan the Hanukkah menorah from 7 lights, which is tonight, and Rosh Chodesh till Mir Hashem, the 8th night, and which you can be talking like the Psak Din is Mylin B'Kodesh, the Eimeridin, and we should continue to go higher and higher, and more light, and share the light with everybody around us. So thanks for listening.